All right. Home Squad Sports. Hope everyone's having a great week. We got a lot to cover. We have playoffs, we have Final Four, transfer portal news, and we're going to talk about a lot of stuff as well with Senior Bowl and roll out that coverage. Dalton cannot make it tonight. Unfortunately, got a little fender bender. He is okay. So T's and P's to Dalton. We got our main man Chris Connor joining us in just a second. But I want to get into some news here. First, just got some recruiting news. Our boy Corey Daly is in Texas right now for the All American game. We want to give a shout out to him. So, shout out Corey Daly. Shout out to Corey Daly. He's a guy we met on the camp trail last year at Elite 11. He's not a low rated guy there. We started posting him. He started getting his word out there, had a big senior season, ended up at number 13th quarterback in the nation, headed to Pitt, and now he is an All American. So it's pretty crazy to see. And shout out to Corey Daly and all of our guys that are off at school. And we will bring our main man, Chris Connor, in here now and bring him in. Chris, how you doing, my man?
I'm hanging in there. We got a lot of transfer portal news to talk about. We got literally tomorrow. We'll start with the college football semifinal playoffs, and yeah, as we're going to talk about Desmond Williams feels like this is going to be the sort of like the nebula of how we're going to change the transfer portal going forward. If you're NCAA and college schools, but Daniel, it's your show, so kick it away. I'm just going to sit and just let you run this show.
Yeah, no problem, man. Like I said, appreciate you filling in on short notice. Got a lot to cover here. Stuff that pretty much everybody's talking about. Put our own spin on thing normally, but yeah, like I said, portal news is going crazy. We only got the one portal window this year, finally, so that's going to be good. I think that's going to pay off for us. We don't have to, worry about having another half a team in 2 months, but that'll be good. But like I said, I want to give a shout out here. Big transfer portal news. Let's go ahead and kick it off. Hollywood Smothers said he was going to be entering the transfer portal, but also testing the draft waters. But it looks like he's staying in school and he is headed to Bama. A big year last year, 939 yards, 6 touchdowns, almost 6 yards a carry. What do you think about this pickup for the Crimson Tide? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, like you said, they're going to probably go with Mac because Ty Simpson announced today he's going to be entering the draft, which is, I think, expected. But then maybe at the end of the season, some people thought he might come back. But I don't really blame him for going. But I agree with you. Yeah, I think the old Saban days, they're done. All the Saban assistants that helped them get all those wins, they're guess what? They're coaching their own teams in the playoff or they're off in the league wherever. But yeah, it's just a new Alabama. It's a new chapter. They need to put like a patch on their jersey or change something in their uniform to let people know like this is not the Alabama you've grew up watching, and just the dominance that they had, it's just not there. They've gotten beat up too much on the front of the line. They got which just not what we've seen. And you could put it, I think it's a perfect storm of the way it happened. Saban on his way out, then you have the NIL and transfer portal to where you're not going to be four deep at every position like Alabama was. That was their luxury. And it kind of really, I'm glad we're talking about Bama because these past couple weeks, I don't haven't lost any respect for Saban, but it's like, could he have won and kept his dominance in this day and age? I don't know. I really don't know if he could have. I think he thought that too. I think he kind of left a couple years too early. I wanted to kind of get your thoughts, given the transfer portal, given to where you have to rebuild every single year. Do you think Saban would have Bam like as good as he always had him? Yeah. Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, I agree. I don't know. I didn't think like maybe if he'd be able to keep it together. It's just such a hard a task these days with the new day and age. It's hard to really keep your team together. You got to re-recruit a new team and a new coaching staff if you're good. If you're good, you're losing your coaches. If you're a good coach, you're having to constantly replace your coaches, and that was Nick Saban. That's what he had to deal with. It was constant. So, it's a sign of success, but it's also a double-edged sword. And like you said, getting up there in age, and that's why you see Bama. DeBoer just couldn't pick up where he left off because of all those holes he has to fill and all those hoops you got to jump through to be successful these days. So I mean, it takes a big collective. It takes big donors now, and it's weird. And some people say it's a young man's game. I just think you just gotta kind of reload every single year, even if you're good or bad. If you're bad, you got to reload because you got to get better players, and if you're good, you got to reload because you lost them either to the league or they went on for payday somewhere else or something. So yeah, I think it's just a mess right now. But Bama, like you said, it's a good move to bring in Hollywood Smothers. I think to beef up that line. That's something that they needed, and I think that's something that we'll see. We'll see in the future. I think we're going to see like a run, kind of like a revolving door at running back. I think that's something that's always going to happen. What do you think?
Possibly. I mean, I think it depends on the teams. I think like we know the Power Five is going to get raided basically like basically a full fridge during a frat house party. They're going to
Right.
get the bones we picked up clean. We've already seen with James Madison. We're seeing with Tulane. I don't know how it's going to work with the power programs in terms of like if you're at a school like Bama, Michigan, you might be able to keep these guys. The trick will be now. If you are in that sort of weird area where you are a Boston College, where you are
Yeah.
a Michigan State, do you now keep hopping around? I mean, I think a lot of running backs are going to look and go, we could do better. We could, but it all depends on the programs. It's some teams are still going to look and go like Texas. Hey, we really don't need a running back. We can get them in. We can get the next hot freshman. If they leave, they leave. Screw it. Quarterback and passing yards is all that matters. And then you got Indiana, which they seem to want everything.
Yep. Exactly. Like you said, perfect. And then he's getting funding from Mark Cuban, as you can see here, which, I mean, the rich gets richer here with Signetti, and just goes to show you he's one of the last few like hard nosed ball coaches we got. I feel like we got Signetti, Lanning, and Kirby Smart. I feel like those guys are their own kind of breed of coaches. Signetti's just this guy that's come from total left field, grinded his way up, and he's done it his way. He's winning his way, and he's not going to maybe get the 4 or 5 star out of high school, but he's going to get the 4 or 5 star in the portal. And he's just proven, man, like you said, with the NIL, with the funding they're getting, the consistency, and the transfers, it just goes to show you got to take that IU logo off the helmet. This is a whole new team. This is not the IU we've ever known, and they're here. It looks like they're here to stay. I think we're going to be talking about IU competing every single year, for a title, just like we were talking like Saban. Like you said, it's a good point. I think he's a guy that's like I said, like a new Saban. But I think it's going to be an interesting game this week, man. I cannot wait till this week and him and Dan Lanning square off for a second time this season, and I can't wait to talk about that. And let's talk about some transfers, though. We'll keep on the Indiana topic here because they're absolutely killing it in the portal. We got Ole Miss having a good portal as well, Houston, Texas Tech, and Penn State. So I want to take a look at some of the guys here that Indiana's picked up. So Josh Hoover out of TCU, Chris, who's a quarterback who's really grown on me this past year. And then they have Nick Marsh from Michigan State, wide receiver, absolute dog. Want to stick on Josh Hoover and get your thoughts. I mean, I think he's just as talented as Mendoza, honestly, as a ball thrower. I don't know, maybe about up, between the ears. But what'd you think about the pickup for IU? Love. I agree. I agree. No, you're good. Yeah. Yeah.
Hoover and Signetti, they're both getting what they want. Now is it can they make it work? That'll be the big question. Can Signetti let the reins go sometimes on Hoover, and can Hoover go, okay, I'm not going to just be able to swing it all over the like I did at Big 12, throwing it for 45, 50 times a game.
Yeah. Yep, I agree. I agree. I do like Hoover though. He that zip on that he's got on the ball. I think he's better than Rourke. So I look at Rourke as the model because that was his first quarterback there in Indiana. I think he's better than Rourke, and they got to the playoffs. So I think if he can make it with Rourke, he can definitely make it with Hoover next year. I think that's a lock in with that. But we will definitely see. I'm curious to see how that plays out. But yeah, they're absolutely killing it in the portal. They got a bunch of guys here. They got Brock Shutt from Miami at tight end. Turbo Richard, running back from Boston College, another guy to look at. Then we got Ole Miss, which has been a crazy hot topic. This pretty much since Lanning, has been going crazy since Lane left. I mean, Lanning, Lane Kiffin, Smart. These guys are my favorite in the in coaching world, and it sucks to see Lane get all the hate just for taking a bigger job. He tried to coach, and they didn't let him. But it's pretty much war between Ole Miss and LSU right now, and Ole Miss is hanging in there, and looks like gaining some ground in my opinion. Lane Kiffin's going to. I love Lane Kiffin, but I'm going to say it. He's probably going to have the biggest pressure on him next year, to win, especially if Ole Miss gets another win, which we'll talk about. But they're making moves in the portal without Lane. Chris Jones at linebacker from Southern Miss, Sharif Denson from Florida at DB, Keaton Thomas and Baylor there linebacker, Jonathan Maldonado at edge there from Nevada, Makai Boreu from Florida, D lineman. We got Jay Crawford from Auburn at corner, Carius Kern from LSU. So already getting a guy from Lane. So, I mean, Lane couldn't retain a guy, lost him to his old school already. That's not a good look. But if he can't play, I guess it really wouldn't matter. But then we got Jaheim Oates, which is a pretty solid defensive lineman from Colorado. So we'll see what happens. Golding, he'll have his first full year next year, and looks like he's going to have a pretty decent, roster to do it with. Do you believe in Ole Miss right now, Chris, to get another win and to be playing for a national championship? Do you believe in them?
I believe in them. I don't know if they'll win, but I believe that they can win, and it's a good match. We'll get to that later, but I want the Curry thing's a big one. I think for Ole Miss because
Yeah.
they get Arkansas outbid them. That's what people forget. But Arkansas threw a lot threw some money at Kearney. They wanted him. Instead, he goes to Ole Miss. It's proof that that there is a groundswell of this. We're in this together, and teams are looking. Players and coaches now are looking at Ole Miss and going, "Hey, it's more than just Lane Kiffin." Kearney's a big one.
That
He is a proven SEC starting offensive tackle, and no matter what happens next year, you're going to need a good offensive line. Whether it's Chambliss, whether who else is the quarterback, you still have Keywan Lacey. So look, getting Kearney was a boon for Golding because he's not. He's also not an offensive guy. He's a defensive guy. So if Golding can steal a guy away who's on the offensive side of the ball from a program, that shows that there is sort of potential for him to maybe even get more.
Yeah, exactly. I think both are going to get more. I think both are going to be pretty good next year. I think obviously both are going to have some pressure, Lane a little bit more. But yeah, I think you made some great points there. I think, um, you know, I think really the blame here, it's not Lane, it's not Ole Miss, it's really the NCAA and the calendar they set right now and is where it's at. And these decisions that are having to get forced because of, the window. So I think that's something to look at, but we'll see in the future, man. A team I'm really curious about here next year is Houston. Houston's got Kashawn Henderson coming in, a quarterback from high school, absolute dog of a quarterback. I think he finished finally number one quarterback in the nation, with kind of trading off between him, Diabell, Jared Curtis. But now Kashawn Henderson, I think, did finish. So shout out to him. I want to get here to the Houston and then Texas Tech, who's got a lot more players. Want to get your thoughts here on Texas Tech. So Texas Tech's got Brennan Sorsby, who supposedly they're paying $5 million. I don't know if I could pay any college kid $5 million unless you've already got a Heisman or already got like a Natty. What do you think of the pickup here, Sorsby to Texas Tech?
You knew this was that after the first year where they got to the Elite Eight of the conference playoffs, and Baron Morton was not the guy. They decided, all right, you know what, our lesson, we're going to get more, we're going to get better players, and yeah, look, they went out there and they got Brendan Sorsby, who he's a better version of what Morton's could be. He's
Yeah.
athletic. He's dynamic. He can run the ball. It's everything else. So you're looking at. I mean, you go through the list. We'll go more detail, but I'll go back to the Sorsby. But they steal Austin Romaine away from Kansas State. Then they raid Trey White, who many say is the best pass rusher, not in the Big Four power program. They steal him away from San Diego State. Then it's Mateen Ibrioga, who you and I talked about with draft professors, possibly a top 100, 150 player. They steal him away from Wake Forest, and then they're still not done. They get Adam Tick from Miami, Ohio, who a lot of people were saying was the best
Yes.
pass rusher in the transfer portal to date. So, look, Cody Campbell wants a national championship, and he's going to buy it the old-fashioned way: oil money and NIL. So it gets back to Sorsby. This year, we wondered if Texas Tech had the offense. They didn't. Now they do, and next year, I think they even might be a favorite to win the national championship because they're not done. You're never going to get more.
Mm.
So I'd say
Yeah.
right now with Sorsby and that whole defensive crew and the players they'll have returning, yeah, they're one of the favorites to win the whole thing.
Okay. I don't hate that. Yeah, I think they got a laundry list of guys who's actually going to be, showing up on the stat sheet, not just depth guys. You got a guy like Adam Trick, who like you brought up for Edge from Miami, Ohio. Me and Dalton was able to see him on our couple scouting trips up there this year. So yeah, absolute playmaker. Bunch of those guys got poached from Miami, Ohio, which sucks to see, but it's the nature of the beast. I like the hot take though, with Texas Tech being favorites next year. I'm actually liking that. I think Sorsby's going to be out there proving, people that, he wants a ship. He's, worth the $5 million they peeled out for him. So I actually don't hate that at all. I want to get your thoughts here before we actually get into some individual transfers with our quarterbacks, because, it's a quarterback driven league, quarterback driven game. And if you don't have a good quarterback, then pretty much anything else you got around doesn't really matter too much. But I want to get into Penn State here. We were talking about the Iowa State Nittany Lions or the Penn State Cyclones, because they've only got here James Peoples from Ohio State, Keanu Williams from UCLA there at D line. Then we got an end there, Alex McPherson from Colorado. And then we got Armstrong Nodium from Oklahoma State. I know I butchered the name, but other than those guys, they pretty much got anybody that could play ball and who had eligibility left from Iowa State and came over to Matt Campbell, because they got a host of them. And it's been pretty crazy to see. I think it's going to be big expectations for Penn State in a couple years, but I really don't think you know right now we're going to have too many, but too many. But what do you think about Penn State and then pretty much bringing over the whole team, kind of doing the Signetti with James Madison move there?
I mean, we knew he had to because unfortunately, Matt Campbell got brought in so late in the process as head coach at Penn State that they couldn't recruit anything. I mean, you said yourself they were 130 something out of 136 teams in college football for recruiting. You
Yeah.
knew that a lot of guys were going to leave because James Franklin had deep ties to him. So look, Campbell's going to do what he does best. And that is, I'm going to bring all the guys I know and trust from Iowa State, which 2 years ago we were talking about them as potentially could have won the whole thing. They had a nice run with that whole crew, and so he's bringing them over. It's going, I think it's just stay afloat. Let's get to a bowl game. Let's get 6 or 7 wins our first year, and then I can build from that. And Rocco Becht, he has a guy that he knows can play. He's not. It's not going to be somebody who has to learn a new system, learn a new way. I personally am a huge fan of the run of Carson Hansen. He's just a power back, which you do need in this league if you're the Big Ten, because you'll have those games where it's just a slog. Weather sucks. It's snowing. It's raining. What better way? And look, I think Benjamin Brahmer is a guy who could break out. We're talking maybe about him as maybe the second or third best tight end in the 2027 draft. So look, I get it. It's not sexy. Penn State fans wanted more, but for what you got from when you got it and for what you were expecting, this is a good move. You're getting a team that's going to be knows how to win. They'll be able to win right away. And then you just you fill in with better recruits going forward without having that 1 year where it's just a whole fire. The house is on fire and everybody's looking, going, okay, we need to leave. This program is dead in the water.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah, like you said, like the expectations I think are going to come down the line, but you got to get some guys that you're familiar with, and some guys that if you're going to take a bigger job at a bigger program where the leash is going to be shorter, you're going to need some guys can make plays, and all those guys coming over with them. a bunch of those are the guys are the reason he got the job. So, we'll see how it goes. And curious to see your thoughts on a couple of these quarterbacks because we're finding a bunch of quarterbacks finding new homes here, Chris. We, like you said, Sorsby at Texas Tech. We got Drew Mestemaker at Oklahoma State. Cutter Boley coming from Kentucky to Arizona State. We talked about Josh Hoover going to Indiana. Then Austin Simmons, who is supposed to be, the Ole Miss starter till Trinidad Chambliss show started, and it hasn't ended yet. So the lefty is headed to Missouri. Then we got Antoine Hill Jr., A.J. Hill, coming from Memphis to Arkansas, one of my favorite young quarterbacks in the nation. And then Kenny Minchey coming over from Notre Dame to Kentucky. Will Stein, offensive coordinator from Oregon, taking the head job at Kentucky. He's hitting the ground running, beefing up the offensive line, and he's trying to get something Kentucky's always struggled to have, which is a good quarterback. So we'll see if Kenny Minchey from Notre Dame will be the answer for them. Aiden Childs, who's had an up and down year, who was hurt a little bit and just had a not the greatest year. Some of the draft professors were pretty high on him, and not only them, a lot of people around the nation. And he just didn't have the year a lot of people thought. So we see if he can bounce back with Chip Kelly at Northwestern. And then the last two here, we got a couple more, but Caden Hauser at Illinois. Coming over from ECU, going over to Brett Bielema, and then Michael Hawkins Jr., which is a curious one from Oklahoma. He is going to be headed over to West Virginia. He's going to be competing with Scotty Fox next year for that job, which is going to be cool. It's going to be cool. So got those on the committed guys, and then a couple more here I think we have. So we did have Byron Brown, who came over with Alex Golish to Auburn from South Florida. Anthony Calandria is headed to Nebraska. He did a 1-year stint at UNLV with Dan Mullen. They got 10 wins, and he is out of town there. Alonzo Barnett from James Madison. This is like, those moves you love to see, going to UCF. Shout out to him. And then Jalen Rayner is an interesting one to look at from Arkansas State, going to Iowa State. But I want to get your thoughts here, Chris, on some of these quarterbacks. We got Mestemaker. A lot of people love him. This is Dalton's top 10 here. Mestemaker, he has number 1. What do you think of some of these quarterbacks? Any names that you think are that these guys are definitely going to have a big year next year?
I'll start off with Anthony Calandria because I'll give kudos to Matt Rule because he had Kenny Minchey. They thought in a deal, and then as we're finding out now, no. Contracts are made to be broken. I wish that was the case in the real world, but so instead, they pivot quickly. They get UNLV's Calandria, who you watch him. He gets the ball out, with a tight zip and unknowing the windows. Short intermediary throws. He's excellent at. Excellent accuracy. Needs to work in the ball placement, but he's a guy who is a established quarterback, which you cannot, especially now if you are, especially Nebraska, because look, they let Dylan Raiola walk.
Yep.
The bowl game was basically sort of a disaster. Calandria, look, he's played in the ACC, had some success last year at UNLV, 9-4, with 23 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, 66% completion package. Look, this is a guy I think that is going to have a pretty good year because he has an offensive guru and Rule, and they're going to find ways to score. They're going to find ways to put points on the board. Cutter Boley's the one I'm very interested in because he is young. And look, he flashed, in Kentucky, but you weren't sure. And now this feels almost like, a long-term short, project for Kenny Dillingham. It was rough, but instead of now the SEC, you go to the Big 12. Instead of, taking on Florida every year and Alabama and Texas, gets a bit easier in the Big 12. And the thing I love about Cutter Boley is he is a big SOB. He's 6'5", 220, huge arm. I wouldn't be surprised if we're talking about this kid in, the next 2 years as possibly an NFL draft pick. Because if you are a good quarterback, Kenny Dillingham will find a way to maximize that. The rest of the list, look, it was everything that you needed. Oklahoma State needed a quarterback. Drew Mestemaker went with a guy who developed him, and it's a perfect fit. Austin Simmons. Missouri needed something. It was bad last year with
Yeah.
Bo Perbola. They have, the running game. They have, the defense. Granted, Damon Wilson, leaving again is going to hurt, but
Yeah.
it is, it's perfect that they get an Austin Simmons who he's a running quarterback who can throw. He's incredibly intelligent from what we saw. This is the ideal fit. Byron Brown, Auburn needs to win, and I think Al Scolish would, as much as he loved Knight, I think he looks at Brown and goes, "Okay, I need to win right away." The natives will get restless like they always do in Auburn. Byron Brown gets them into that 7-8 win, scenario. So I can't complain with any of them. The only one that probably, you look and go, is Hawkins, just because you wonder if he's ever going to hit. If is he just going to be a great athlete as a quarterback, or will he something click? But again, this is a transfer portal, and sometimes it's what you can afford, not what you want. So I don't know. Aiden Shaw's to me is another one of those guys. Is Northwestern going to be able to tap in and have him as the guy that started the years in as hot, and or is this going to be a guy that the next year we're going to look and go, okay, we need to replace Aiden Shaw. So much is going to come down to coaching. So much of it is going to come down
Yeah.
to, do they have the pieces there? Like, even Grunkmeyer will he benefit from being in more of a wide open ACC, or is he what he is? I don't know if right now if you're betting, who are the guys that you like as next year we're going to talk about them as transfer portal successes?
Man, I think AJ Hill is going to be one of them. I think some of the guys that are not committed yet, they can go ahead and bring up some of these guys that are left in the portal because that'll be on my list. So Deuce Knight's one of them as well from Auburn, lefty. I love him. I don't see why he's still on the board. Um, Sam Levitt, I don't know where he's going to go, man. I think Kentucky we're talking about. Oregon was in talks. Now it's pretty much Oregon and LSU. Um, but yeah, I think let's see about the portal. I'm really curious to see about Deuce Knight, AJ Hill. Arkansas hasn't had a good quarterback play in some time. I think that'll be pretty big. Sorsby, I think you'll have them as your favorite going in for the title. I don't hate that. I think he's going to have a hell of a year. But let's talk about Cutter Boley. I'm glad you brought him up. I think Dillingham just finally wanted a guy who he didn't have to worry about leaving. In the portal, he's like, all right, Kentucky supposedly just didn't want to give him the money that Arizona State was getting him. Supposedly it was around 2.5 mil Arizona State was offering, and then Kentucky was only doing around 1. That's supposedly. That's just what I heard. Just living in Kentucky, you get some people are kind of close to it, but some, you just never know. But those are the numbers that were thrown around. They just didn't want to pay what Arizona State didn't want to pay. Will Stein says, no, I'll come in and bring my own guy. And it doesn't mean Cutter Boley's bad. It just means he wants to come and bring his own guy in. But Cutter Boley, like you said, I think he's definitely got some NFL potential. He needed a team that wants him, and Dillingham needed a quarterback that wants him as well. So it was a win-win for both the parties here with Arizona State and Cutter Boley. He's a big body. He's had shown some moments where he's had some flashes and put the team on his back. He's also had some moments where he showed him, he just was a Kentucky kid going to the local school and just had some stuff to work on. So it's all about a ceiling with him right now, as opposed to production. But that's a good thing to have, because a lot of these guys are closer to the top of their ceilings than we thought, like a guy like Aiden Childs. I think he's one of those guys you're going to have to put the bumpers on. You're going to have to put the guardrails around a little bit and kind of guide him in his way. He's not a guy you just go out there and let him lead your way, lead your team. You kind of have to lead him. And more of pretty much you're saying he's a system quarterback, and that's pretty much what I'm saying. So we'll see with him and Chip Kelly. Chip Kelly going from the highest paid coordinator of the NFL to back at Northwestern. It's just not something maybe he thought was going to happen. So we'll see how he adjusts there in Northwestern. Glad you brought up Grunkmeyer. I'm really curious about them. It's one of those quarterbacks I totally just really don't have an opinion on yet. I just got to see some more of him play, which we'll see. We'll see what James Franklin can cook up Virginia Tech in year one. I'm really curious about Virginia Tech here. And then Byron Brown, who is responsible for the most touchdowns in the nation. So But Auburn's just a tough place to win, man. I think Auburn's one of the most toughest jobs in the nation. And I think talk about some of these guys, that are still available. So we got Lagway and Rayola, who are big names, and it looks like either they're waiting for the perfect fit with a team around them, or their phone's not ringing as much as they thought it would. What is your thoughts right now as we stand with Lagway and Rayola, and just how good are they, and where do you think they'll end up?
With Lagway, it's a tease. It's you see, and
Yeah,
again, he wasn't healthy last year, and look, you look at a head coaching situation, and that was and Billy Napier was just not the right guy for him. As you know, as Nino Brown put it, basically, Billy Napier was too busy on Twitter, getting into flame wars with Florida fans and really coaching. So,
yeah,
yeah, the transfer of Lagway, I guess, bothers me because the more you hear about it, the more it was. He needs sort of, to be. I don't want to use the word pampered, but reassured. So whichever coach gets him, you need to reassure him, hey, he's the best thing in the world. He is great. He is awesome. We
yeah,
believe in you. And I don't know how many coaches want to do that. Like Summerall did not.
mm,
Summerall was basically a guy who it's if
yeah,
you are in, great. If not, well, screw you. I'm going to destroy you because I do that with all my guys who leave here. So I don't know. I mean, the more I think about it, the more he might end up in Baylor. His dad played there. He's from there.
mm,
It's more of a safe environment. I think that's a place where he could maybe thrive a bit and not have all that pressure. Rayola's going to be
yeah,
the one that you look and it's sort of he needs hard coaching. I get it. Baby
yeah,
Mahomes is always fun to watch, but there were times as Price Carter would detailed, it's almost like he is in like Shador Sanders and Trinidad Shameless are in that same club of run around, just don't take a sack, but just run around and maybe we'll try to make a big play, but maybe not. In a Rayola to me is one of those guys who's sort of waiting on what Dante Moore does. Because I think in a perfect world, Rayola steps into Oregon. Dan Lanning can maybe get his head screwed on right and fix Rayola to be the quarterback we think he can be. But again, I've heard Miami's lurking around. Tennessee's in there right now. Sam Levitt's sort of the one that everybody's sort of waiting on. All right,
yeah,
where does Sam Levitt go? Once Levitt decides, then everything else falls. Because again, I could see Lagway at LSU. I
yeah.
could see Dylan Rayola at LSU. It just depends on what Levitt does. If Levitt goes to LSU, we might get a lot more chaos because we'll figure out, okay, does Lagway go home and be safe in, of all places, Baylor? Does Dylan Rayola end up in Miami or does he go to Oregon? Hell, I still have no idea where Bo Pribolo could go, but he is a guy who is efficient, and there's going to be some program, some team that's going to look and go. I just want a guy who can do steady work. I don't need anything great. Just give me steady work, and I can live with that.
I agree. I agree. I think, yeah, he's one of those guys. Then you got a guy like Deuce Knight. I think Deuce Knight's a guy that really intrigues me because he has eligibility left, right? So he's going to have, pretty sure he was redshirting this year at Auburn. Don't think he went over the 4 games. Um, he had a 300-yard performance. He rushed for over 100, I think, in one game. So he's a guy that I would look at if I'm a coach and I need to fill my quarterback position. I'm less going for the 1-year rental. Pretty much, if I can't get Sam Levitt, I'm going Deuce Knight. I wouldn't mess around with Lagway and Rayola. I would there's kind of like rentals to me, even though I just would like a guy I can build with for multiple years that doesn't have a lot of baggage, that doesn't have, you know, X amount of games of bad film, that is pretty much just more of a softball or clay that I can kind of mold as opposed to I have to break down and rebuild. With you're going to have to tweak a lot of things with Rayola and Lagway, especially depending on where they go and what system they're going to run. When this all came out, I thought Rayola was maybe looking at Louisville. I thought Louisville would be a good fit for him, but that didn't come about. And then for Lagway, that was a total shot in the dark for me. I'm hearing Virginia for DJ Lagway. I don't know if you've ever seen anything about that, but I'm hearing Virginia is a team to watch, and Baylor, like you said. But I don't know, man. It's crazy to see all these hyped quarterbacks that's came in these past couple years, and now it's like they're kind of looking for their second shot, you know. But
I could
Levitt,
see
but
that.
like you said, Levitt's the big ball to fall. I think, in my opinion, it's Oregon or LSU. If where would you think Levitt ends up?
I'll say either LSU or Miami. Again,
Mm,
it's the tough part is everybody has said Tennessee's out there, so I won't get rid of. I won't count out them, but it's again as we talked about all these players. They have an agent who is a family member or a family member who's sort of the head aide, and with Sam Levitt, it's his brother, which this started with them in the first place when basically they said, oh no, Sam's not leaving Arizona State back in November, and then he was, and we've heard that they're demanding a lot of money, and it's just you follow some of the guys, you have the NFL beat guys, and everyone's already worried from NFL teams about Levitt because it's like, all right, is this going to be another scenario like the ball family back over in the NBA? Are we going to deal with this meddling family that gets involved, tries to make big deals? It starts in college, so that's the thing. The brother's the agent. His brother's a former athlete, an NFL safety. So you sort of start worrying about, okay, great. Is he doing what's best for his brother? Is he also trying to cash in because the money is now bigger than it's ever been? These are things now you have to worry about, and
yeah.
it's again, this is not good. That's why I could see this dragging out because too many teams are going to look at Sam Levin and go, "Are you in this, or are you going to pull this again within the next say 12 months? Or hey, are you going to leave us midway through the season if you feel, oh, I'm a little bit
Mm-hmm.
dinged up, and I'll wait for the draft."
Mm-hmm. Good point. Yeah, that's a good point. I think, yeah, it depends where what you want. You have to know these kids more than ever, and really have to see where their heads at going in. And then the coaches have to kind of be honest with them, more than they ever have been. They can't just say they're going to play them, and then as soon as they get on campus, shove them down the depth chart because they can't leave. So it goes both ways. A lot of the players, a lot of the coaches, they both have to abide by these rules that the NCAA has set, which they shouldn't be set. I think we can take a look at Jed Fish, Washington's taking legal action against Damon Williams about him transferring. I think they should take legal action against the NCAA, right? I mean, they should be able to like, yo, why is he even allowed to leave? Not why are you leaving? In my opinion, but do you think Washington has a legit case here and they'll be able to block this, or is Williams pretty much gone?
I have no idea. Logically, it's this should be open and shut. You signed a contract. You got to honor the contract. Unless you want to give back this money, and even then, Washington can just say no. We're not. You made a deal. This is how it works in the NFL. You can't just go, well, yeah, well, I signed a $5 million deal for 1 year, but wait a minute, this other team is giving me now $7 million, so I'm just going to leave
Yeah.
you, even though I signed. So I can't. There's nobody in charge. The NCAA is about as toothless as a toddler. The the Big Ten, sort of let this go the first time around with a similar situation. Granted, it wasn't a quarterback, and now it's
Yeah.
sort of bit them in the ass. And I, everybody's sort of wondering, like, okay, what do we do? Because this feels like
Mhm.
Armageddon. This feels like every college, program is now going to look at this and go, yeah, we're just going to get rid of scholarships altogether. Screw this. We're just going to buy players. Because at this point, if this is what it's going to turn into, just admit this is going to be a semi-pro. No more we're paying for the dorms. No more we're paying for your meals. Just here's a contract. You played for Washington State, and that's it.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's the way they should go. I think it's what it will happen. I think we're going to see a big conference. That's what's going to take a big conference. But I think we're going to see a big conference break away from the NCAA. Just say, hey, we're going to govern our own self and map it out themselves because the NCAA pretty much, only thing they do is suspend people and they overturn eligibilities to where coaches have to overturn rosters at a shorthand's notice because, guys got waivers and stuff like that. I just think the teams and the programs, the schools have more leverage than NCAA. And then you look at it, the players, and they got just about as much leverage or even more leverage than the schools. So it's pretty much like these it's kind of like the NBA. The NBA and the coaches and the players, like the players make more than the coaches, and it's more of like their coworkers rather than player and coach. I think that's what we're going to see in college. It's going to be more like a coworker situation, guys calling their coach by their first name, yada yada, and it's more of just such a business transaction. Like we've already seen guys transfer from one rival school to the other, and some people say they hate that, some people say they love it, but then we get things on the other side, some of the beauty about this whole situation, because we wouldn't be talking about Kurt Cignetti in Indiana if it wasn't for this NIL and this transfer portal era. So I think that's something we have to kind of keep in mind and take with a grain of salt, which is kind of a good segue to talk about these teams because all of these teams here, looking at every single team has got a transfer quarterback playing in this game. Miami, Ole Miss, Oregon, and Indiana. I think the last five Heisman winners have been transfers as well, or something like that. So I think we're officially numb to the transfer portal. It's just and people transferring. We're just not numb to them transferring this often, and the whole money situation. But the stage has been set nonetheless, Chris. We got the last four teams here, last two games. We got the Fiesta Bowl and the Peach Bowl. Miami versus Ole Miss, which pretty means Carson Beck or Trinidad Chambliss will be playing for a national championship. That is a fact. And then you have Oregon and Indiana, which is the rematch. Can Dan Lanning get the dub, or is Cignetti going to beat Dan Lanning and the Ducks twice in 1 year? That's going to be my favorite game, of the week. I'm very excited for it. Before we get into our picks and just overall thoughts of the game, with these four teams looking in, we don't have a Georgia. We don't have a Bama, obviously. And Ohio State, the reigning champion, who is the de facto, everyone said they were on the mountaintop. I'm guilty. I said it too. They were my pick. They're out. They're gone. They're done. And we have these four teams remaining. What is your overall thoughts? Do you like these four teams? Do you have any gripes? What do they need to fix, or what do you love about it?
It's funny, you have one matchup is what we expected. I mean, because everybody thought, okay, Indiana was going to get by whoever Alabama or Oklahoma threw.
Yeah.
And they get it in there. And I think a lot of people expected, okay, Oregon should have been a top 4 seed. They kind of got screwed, but they would get by Texas Tech because, hey, Big Ten is superior. Any other matchup is sort of, it's funny. I call it, the Cinderella stories. It is Old Miss, which has been, left at the altar by Lane Kiff and everybody telling them, oh, yeah, you're going to get bounced. You guys aren't that good. Hey, LSU is probably better. They've been told, Trinidad Chambliss, who the hell is this guy here? And yet they are the VRV Cinderella story. Trinidad Chambliss, I think, is the best football story since Kurt Warner, a guy who he was supposed to be he was supposed to be a backup. That's what we thought. He transferred in from Ferris State. He wasn't even the starter, wasn't recruited to be a starter.
He redshirted at Ferris State too. Like he just wasn't. He didn't start as soon as he even got the D2 Ferris State. He had to redshirt at Ferris State, which is crazy.
And you watch him; he does nothing right in terms of traditional football. He scrambles around like it's backyard, running 20 yards. Backpedaling 5 yards, running back 10 yards, running around. Then makes these just spectacular passes. You can't explain it, but it makes sense. And the rest of Ole Miss, it's a bunch of guys. Outside Keywan Lacey, they're good, not great. Centerine Perkins is a undersized defensively end, and yet it's basically they're winning out of spite. You feel like they have looked around and they said, oh, Lane, you want to do us dirty like this? You want to leave to a LSU and string us along? Well, screw you. We're not even coming here. We're winning this whole damn thing. And meanwhile, the Miami Hurricanes, everybody keeps going. Okay, they're gonna lose. It's Mario Cristobal. He will throw up on himself again. He always throws up on himself. Miami Hurricanes is never gonna come back. And yet they're doing it old school football, just defense, power running. It's not pretty, but guess what? Job done, and they've taken on two teams that we thought were going to slaughter them. The early number one team in the country at first, Texas A&M, held them to 3 points and picked off Marcel Reed several times. And then they walk in there and again against Ohio State, physically bullied Ohio State around. You never thought you'd see that. It's almost sort of like which coach is going to throw up on himself. That's what's come down to. It's will Pete Golding finally, show he's not really a head coach? Will Mario Cristobal finally give that throw up that we always expect? That's what's come down to. But in the meantime, it's two teams you're falling in love with for just good, sound, hard football, and being better than the sum of their parts.
I agree. I agree. I love how you said it because you got a guy like I love the Ole Miss and Miami because what they need to win on both sides. So Miami needs to score points. Carson Beck cannot turn the ball over. They can't have another game where the defense just saves the day for them. They need to score points to beat this team and pretty much beat any team from here on out. So that's a big question. Can Carson Beck score points without giving the ball to the other team too many times? And then Ole Miss, can Ole Miss and can Trinidad Chambliss run around, make his magic that he's been making all year with Ruben Bain and Akeem Mesidor in his face? So, I mean, you love that. And then you have the rematch. You got Signetti, who's got all these vets around his team. And then you got Oregon, who's doesn't have a really big weakness. I think their biggest weakness is their size and their wide receivers. They just don't have big receivers. Dante Moore's throwing to pretty much a bunch of slots out there and Sadiq. So I'm curious to see what happens. Dante Moore threw 2 picks in the last time they played. Is Dante Moore really going to throw 2 picks against Indiana this time? That's where I'm just like, I'm kind of makes me lead towards the Ducks. I'm where you can't see it, and where I'm a Oregon, jacket for a reason. I think the Ducks are going to pull it off for honestly that reason alone. I don't think Dante Moore is going to hand the ball off to the other team too many times. I think he's going to play it safe, play it smart. Malik Benson has to come up big in this game, and Oregon's offensive line just has to keep on playing like Oregon's offensive line's been playing. Leo Lalu, Poncho's coming back next year. Their center, one of my favorite centers in the nation. He's coming back. But they have, the vets on there. They got Pregnon, they got World, they got Harkey. Barry Alexander on the other side on the defensive line. Is he going to be able to get some pressures there on Mendoza? Mendoza, is trying to prove that he is the Heisman. He's just Oregon doesn't really have, besides their DBs, we've seen, guys go off their, last week, young bucks, guys just playing their first year of college football. But can the D line get pressure on Mendoza? That's my biggest question. I want to say it doesn't matter and that Oregon's offense is just going to score enough points, but that would just be stupid because you're going to have to stop Indiana because no one stopped Indiana. Like you said, which coach is going to, piss on themselves, throw up? Which one's going to just totally, call a bad drive, go for it on fourth down when they shouldn't be, are we going to see a team settle for 3 or not settle for 3 and be stingy and try to get a touchdown? It comes to those little things and those game management things to where, Signetti and Dan Lanning, they both have had playoff experience. And then you got, a fill-in coach in Ole Miss, which I don't think we've ever seen an interim coach, or I guess, he's be a coach next year, but I don't think we've ever seen a team that has lost their coach throughout the season, whether it be during the season or postseason, make it this far, into the playoffs. So I think that's something to take account. But let's go ahead and get to some picks. I've never had more of a toss-up game, Chris, than this Miami Ole Miss game. I don't know who the hell is going to win. I've been trying to think about it all week. Since this matchup was set, I have no idea who's going to win this game. Ruben Bain, how does he not throw Trinidad Chambliss off a couple times? How does Mesidor not get home a couple times? So I really want to get your thoughts on where you're leaning here for Miami of Ole Miss because I have no clue. I really don't.
I don't know. Logically, I know the way
It's a good
Miami
problem to
wins.
have.
I mean, not my logically, if I am Mario Cristobal, I am feeding the rock to Mark Fletcher and letting him just run
Right.
25, 30 times just because we saw what Georgia did. Georgia was able to just pound that ball up the middle. Ole Miss couldn't stop them. The defense is good, not great. They should be able to do this.
That's a
Ruben
good point.
Payne
I
and
think is
Akeem Messidor should be able to just cause havoc.
they
And
got
yet
to.
every
They
time
got
I
to.
keep
That's
yeah,
how they win.
and yet every time we keep saying it, it's like, well, so why didn't Georgia do this? How did Georgia give up the first ever lead after the second half and blow it? How? How is it that friggin' of all teams here, we look at, every team in the SEC that wasn't Georgia couldn't beat friggin' Ole Miss? How is it that Trinidad Chambers does everything that he's not supposed to do, and yet he keeps winning? It makes no sense. So on that, I'm going with Ole Miss. I've given up. I've literally this team makes no sense, but it makes perfect sense. So look, I somehow they're gonna pull a rabbit out of their ass. Somehow Trinidad Chambliss is gonna just elude Ruben Bain for one play, throw a deep strike down the
Mm.
field, lead to a Key-One lazy touchdown to win at the end, and we're all going to sit there and go, "That makes no sense," but it makes sense. I'm more confident of the other one. Indiana just wins. Kurt Signetti doesn't care. As he says, "Google me, bitch." That's all he's going to say. And we keep waiting for some team. We thought Oregon was going to do it. Nope. We thought Penn State had him as an upset. Nope. We thought Ohio State was going to do it. Nope.
I
And
did. Yep.
And then the Alabama game, I think, is just that was a statement to Oregon going, no, we don't care that you have all these damn 5-star recruits. Look what we just did to Bama. They literally took them outside, the woodshed, beat them up, pulled their pants down, shoved a broomstick up their rear end, and then sent them off their way without dinner. It was domination. I like Dan Lanning. I
I
like
agree.
Oregon. I think this is just Indiana's year where it's like everything clicks. There's no weakness, and they are confident. If it gets into a one score game and with 2 minutes left, Mendoza will drive down the field, get a touchdown, and there's nothing we can do because it's just efficient. He is the remember that movie The Accountant with Ben Affleck? That's what he
Yeah.
called Kurt Signetti, the accountant. He never loses his temper, never gets too excited. It's just he has that same look, whether it's you're up by 40, down by 30, and he's going to murder you and you can't stop it.
I agree, man. I agree with you, but I'm just the other way with Miami. I think Ruben Bain's going to get there one too many times, and I think I'm still going to be impressed with Chambliss on how he performs. I think Chambliss is still going to have a game. I think he's gonna somehow pull 3 touchdowns out of his ass, but he's gonna need 4. And that's where I think he's gonna be one too many short. I think Deshaun Stribling's an interesting case, though. I love Deshaun Stribling on Ole Miss. Shout him. Uh, Carson Beck, though. I'm saying Ruben Bain can't score touchdowns. Ruben Bain's not the guy throwing and passing. He can only do so much at defensive end, and same thing with Mesidor. So who's going to put the points on the board? I'm glad you brought up Mark Fletcher. Malachi Tony and Mark Fletcher's these guys have been pretty much carrying this team on the offensive end, especially with Malachi Tony being a true freshman. But Mark Fletcher, he's a guy people give him his credit during the game, but it's like as soon as the whistle blows, the game's over. People forget about Mark Fletcher. He's a big reason they're still playing football right now. He has to have a big game for him. I think he's going to have a big game. I think Tony and Mark Fletcher are going to bail Carson Beck out and not really just make it easy for him. Really, not bail him out. Just make it easy. They're like Debo Samuel out there, like ×2 at times. It's just they're dynamic. Their play calling's good. Crystal Fraud is, he's here. But Chambliss, man, it's just I feel wrong like betting against this guy. I feel wrong picking against him because he's made it so damn interesting and so fun to watch. It's been a heck of a story. Uh, it's been a story just from him coming from D2 and then you throw the lane drama on top of it. It's like, man, this team has every reason to have already been out of the playoffs and lost last time. They didn't, but it's gonna hurt me. I'm gonna go ahead and take the Canes by like 3 to 7, maybe 4. I think maybe Ole Miss is gonna need. They're gonna be down 4. They're gonna maybe need a touchdown, and they're not gonna be able to get it. I don't know what exact score, but that's just the scenario I'm thinking. And then as for the Oregon Indiana game, I look at it's hard to beat a good team twice, but the team that did beat a good team the first time, Indiana, is freaking really good. Like they're just really good, and maybe they just do get it done. And the whole like sayings and the whole test of times stuff just goes out the window, and they just beat Oregon's ass. That could happen. And it may not show up on the scoreboard. Could they just win by 14 and win by 10 and just beat them up the whole game? But I just I don't know, man. I watch Dan Lanning pretty closely. Every week they have like a video series that comes out how they prepared for each game, and you see how Dan Lanning operates behind the scenes, man, and how nasty he is. He's reminds me of Signetti. They're like one of the same. They really are, and it really they got a lot of similarities. They're guys that coached under Saban, and it's just hard for me to pick against them. It's because Dante Moore. It's not like they played a perfect game and still lost against Indiana. There was a one-score game with like 6 minutes left, and then Indiana pulled away at the end. But Dante Moore threw 2 picks. He's 20 years old. Do I think he's going to throw 2 picks again, or that's what's going to take? He could throw one maybe, and they can still get away. Multiple turnovers for the Ducks kills them. But I'm going to take the Ducks here. I'm going to go on a limb and take Oregon. I think they're going to get the job done. I think we're going to see Miami versus Oregon in the national championship, and yeah, that's what I think we're going to see. I'm curious to see. It sucks we're having this game on a Thursday. This pod's only going to live for one day, but that's okay. I think they just didn't want to really, compete with NFL and the wild card, but it's all right. We got football all week, and curious to see it, man. This is going to be one heck of a showdown, and I'm curious to see how it goes out, man. So your national championship pick here. What do you have squaring off in the national championship, Chris, for the people here?
I've got Indiana versus Old Miss. Like as I
Okay.
said, logic says Miami should win, but logic also said Georgia should have won. Logic also said that Ohio State should have won. I've given up on logic. It makes no sense this whole playoff. I mean, if somebody said to you that Miami and Old Miss would be in the semifinals, you would have asked them if they were, eating too many edibles or drinking too much, Jaeger bombs, and pat them on the head. Said, okay, you know, yes, I understand you're related to Carson Beck. That doesn't mean you're an expert, but here we are. Indiana, look, they have a team of destiny. They've every time we've asked them, can you pull off a challenge? They've pulled off a challenge. And look, I get it. We have great logic, but remember, they walked into Oregon, took Oregon's best shot, and still beat them in the second half. They've done it every time. I get it. It's because Will Thomas basically said Oregon has more 5-star recruits. Alabama had more 5-star recruits, and we saw what Indiana did. This is a team that just if Ole Miss is about spite, Indiana is about just the chip on their shoulder of we're only 2-star recruits. Our quarterback's only a 0-star recruit. Well, that's the Heisman Award winning 0-star recruit to you there, Mister. Look, it's the goofy nerd quarterback, the accountant head coach, and this team of transfers and vagabonds, you could call them, but they've beaten everybody. That's why I'm taking them over Oregon. I'm taking them to win the whole thing. And the scary part is Kurt said then he's not done. He wants more. He might go down as doing a better job than what Nick Saban did at Alabama. That's going to be a scary part.
I agree. He is scary. He's just a scary coach. He's scary because how good he is, and it's like you bring up a great point. As soon as we say, "All right, Indiana, we got a new challenge for you," they not only overcome that challenge, they're not limping off the battlefield. They're not limping off the field. They're ready for a new one. As soon as you're done, they're not satisfied, and it's good to see. It's good to see. And it's a portal built team. This is a team that's built for the portal. People can hate on the portal. It's definitely got its flaws. Nothing's perfect. College football is full of flaws, but this is a team that has been built by the portal. If we didn't have the portal, we wouldn't have this Indiana Hoosiers team. I mean, they're going to be their 3 quarterback in 3 years next year, and they're probably going to be going 3 for 3 in the playoffs. So goes to show you what Cignetti's building. And like you said, he could pull it off just as good as Saban, if not better, and just how many winning percentage he does doing it with Indiana. I mean, yeah, Saban did it with Bama, who wasn't Bama yet, but they did have a history at least. Indiana doesn't really have a storied history. They don't have a Bear Bryant to speak of or hang their hat on years ago. That it's Indiana. They're Bobby Knight basketball school. That's their history. That's all people really know. Striped pajama pants on the bench for the warm-ups. That's what people know. They don't really know them for being the hardest badass football team in the nation. So it's just kind of, it takes some time to get used to, but I think people are finally used to it. And I think if you're not after this, you're just kind of not living in reality, because I think they're here to stay. They'll be here next year. We'll be talking about them probably in exactly 12 months from now, and with Josh Hoover, in my opinion. But I like your picks, man. I think they're solid. I think this is a great Final Four. I love it. Really don't have too many complaints. I know my pick went to shit with Ohio State, but I'm not too mad about it. I mean, they lost the game. They got punched in the mouth. It's not like they lost off some BS call or a flag. They just lost the game. So it sucks that it had to go that way, but I would rather it go that way than, something controversial. So yeah, I got Lanning though, and curious to see it. We saw Lanning at the Senior Bowl, which would go ahead and get into our last topic of the night. So we are going to start Senior Bowl coverage here, people. Shout out to all the 200 people that are here live. I know we had some technical difficulties at first, but do want to say shout out to anybody that tuned in Monday. That was actually our highest. Most people we've had live ever on a show. Then right at the end we hit that. So shout out to everyone that's been tuning in. Really appreciate it. We got coverage, starting with Senior Bowl, nonstop here, and transfer portal. Then we got recruits, coming down the pipeline as well. If you didn't catch it here in the first couple of minutes, Dalton could not make it. He got in a car accident. But he's okay, people. So shout out to Dalton, T's and P's, and man, he will be okay. So don't worry, he'll be back next episode. But if you see here on the screen, next episode, actually on Monday at 12, Will Thomas will be joining us as well from Tailgate Talk SEC. He'll actually be joining us every single Monday leading up to the Senior Bowl. We leave for the Senior Bowl on the 26th of this month, January. So join us here from Monday and Wednesday as we break down every single position, every single player that's going to be at the Senior Bowl, because the stars of tomorrow are going to be at the Senior Bowl. The draft starts in Mobile, and man, we cannot wait. It's going to be an absolute ball. We got 7 first-round picks last year from the Senior Bowl, 50 through the first 3 rounds here. 50 of the top 102 players selected were at the Senior Bowl last year in the draft. 12 teams selected 4 or more players last year from the Senior Bowl. So it's pretty crazy, man. I think what was the total amount of players I think drafted last year was like 100 and over 100. So pretty crazy. And they've already got some late names added to the Senior Bowl as in the past 48 hours. So let's go ahead and run through those. We got Garrett Nussmeier, quarterback from LSU, who did accept his invite to the Senior Bowl. Then we got Casey Concepcion, who's a wide receiver from Texas A&M, absolute playmaker. He's a dog, number 1 on some people's boards. I think some of the guys from Draft Professors have him as the number 1 wide receiver, and I don't think it's the hottest it takes because he's a dog. We can't wait to see him. And then we're going to get to see Eric Singleton Jr., Auburn wide receiver who transferred from Georgia Tech, speedy receiver, slot guy, and honestly, there's a couple other guys as well, a Dartmouth O-lineman. So the roster is really close to getting filled out, pretty much finalized, and we will have you covered there these next 3 weeks leading up to the Senior Bowl. Chris, I want to get your thoughts here. I mean, the quarterback classes, some people are saying it's down. We're going to have Diego Pavia. We're going to have Nussmeier, Altmaier, Taylon Green. But I want to get your thoughts on somebody, Cole Payton. Are you familiar? You're familiar with Cole Payton from North Dakota
I'm
State,
good with
right?
Cole Payton. I And I get it. Anthony Russo and the Cole Payton fan club are pushing him heavily. And look, you look at it sort of, okay, I see what he has. He's bigger than most quarterbacks in this draft. He's 6'3", about 233 pounds. He balled out his only year, literally at North Dakota State. I just again, it's here's the problem I have. It's North Dakota State. So what happens? The Senior Bowl is going to be big because you want to see, okay, what happens when you're taking on guys who are, have closing speed where there is no open windows, where you aren't the best athlete on the field. I mean, we've seen it a lot with guys from Division II and even from the Ivy League. They look great
Yeah,
in these places, and then they get to the SEC, the ACC, even the Big 12, and oh crap, they're not the best athlete. They are average. Look. I'm rooting for Cole Payton. It's a great story, but if I'm an NFL scout, I'm gonna want to see him at the Senior Bowl, showing that he belongs, and then not that. Oh, the clock struck 12. The Cinderella's carriage turned into a pumpkin, and Cole Payton is just a good college quarterback.
I agree. I agree. He plays for a juggernaut in the FCS, which is always great. And then he has Lance there at wide receiver, who's an NFL guy. But some people don't like him because he's a lefty. I just don't think some lefties can make it work, but it's just a taller task as being a lefty quarterback. I think it's kind of just a universal thing. But yeah, I think he's just got a lot of stuff to work on. But we're gonna get to see him up close, which is cool. His release kind of scares me at sometimes. I think he could maybe make a roster for a couple years at the quarterback, but in my opinion, have you heard of the rumors that some people are liking him as a tight end at the next level? Have you heard that at all?
No, but wouldn't surprise me. I mean, because you're just not sure. Like even
Yeah.
all that stuff, and it's one thing to see, as you mentioned, the release point, the
Yeah.
footwork. If it works in the SEC in the Big 12, you can go, well, he's a good enough athlete to pull it off, a la Jackson Dart.
Yeah.
When it's the FCS, when it's North Dakota State versus Northern Iowa State, and he's not getting pressured, and he has a clean pocket the entire game. You have to worry, like, what happens when he gets hit the first couple times? If his mechanics are already sort of wonky now, what happens when everything gets sped up and he's getting flustered?
Yeah. I agree. I agree. And then yeah, it's just a different speed. That's the thing that people say is the biggest thing. It's the speed. And my thing with lefties is obviously your right tackle becomes your left tackle. Your left tackle becomes your right tackle. But what a lot of people don't talk about it, I think, is receivers. They have to catch the ball you know, predominantly on a different shoulder. So most shoulders, from your dominant shoulder, all of those throws all of a sudden become back shoulder throws. And that's just also a big adjustment you have to do. And then another thing people don't really talk about is the hashes. When you get to the NFL, the hashes get smaller. The hashes get more narrow in the NFL. They're more middle of the field. They're not as spread out. So the game is played more in the middle of the field. That's why running the ball is so important in the NFL and throwing across the middle is so hard. So I think that's where the lefties have a really hard time because I've watched some film on him and there's literally film where he's rolling out and it's a touchdown if he's right-handed, but it's not because it's a cross-body throw and it takes too long because he's left-handed and he's rolling out, to the right. I don't hate left-handed quarterbacks because I love JKS. Like JKS is one of my favorite quarterbacks in the nation and he's a lefty too. So I just think he's just got some things to work on, but but that makes it awesome because the Senior Bowl, it's what it's made for because he can go out here and prove all of us wrong and all the critics wrong. But I am hearing, Chris, that some scouts are really liking him as a potential switch to tight end. So um, curious how that plays out. And we'll see how it happens. I think he could be a max contract tight end. It's like, all right, be a bubble guy, third stringer, second stringer, practice squad guy at quarterback, or do you want to be a potential max contract guy at tight end? That's where I think he's looking at right now. But because he's big 230, he's got Tim Tebow in him. He's like Tim Tebow to me. He's lefty, can run, just gotta but maybe not as good as Tebow because I don't know. I think I've had a lot of nostalgia with Tim Tebow here lately. I really miss Tim Tebow for some reason. I think he's a guy that would shine today in
I
the
don't
league
know it.
too.
I
I think
love
he
Tim
could in the
Tebow.
league.
I mean, I love Tim Tebow. I think, unfortunately, this league has always been about it's a win now. It's what can you do for me now. In a perfect world, you'd have the NFL Europe where you could develop guys.
Mm,
That's not the case anymore. Uh, and look, there's probably a lot of good young quarterbacks who've gotten screwed because the head coach didn't have time, or the offense coordinator wasn't that good.
yeah,
The owner meddled. And we've seen that sometimes with a Baker Mayfield and Geno Smith, where they need that second or third chance. But
yeah,
with Cole Payton and Tebow, it's like you really need to develop them. You need to perfect place for Cole Payton is probably somewhere like the Los Angeles Rams, or even I'll throw it out there a bit, the Buffalo Bills, where he can sit, he can learn, he can develop. They're not rushing him. There's time. You can have him as the backup quarterback because the starter never almost gets hurt, or there's a plan in place. And this way, if you show something, you can develop it and either trade him later away to a place where they'll give him a starting job, or he can take over. But we've seen the NFL. There's just with the salary cap, with everything that goes on, there's no more. I guess the old way of a Green Bay Packers, which is draft, develop, and stash them, that just doesn't work because you need all that extra money. And there's no with practices being the way they are, players don't develop as well as they did.
yeah. And then the coaches don't have as much time, and they don't want to take the time as well. Yeah, so I think you make a good point there. So yeah, I think it's crazy right now. I think it's just all about who wants to develop, who doesn't want to develop, who wants to invest, who doesn't want to invest. You see franchises like the Bengals, who like they invest in a wide receiver, but it looks like they're not really investing in the line. So I don't know. It just seems like they're kind of half pregnant. They're kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out. But I think to end it out here, I want to get your thoughts on the remaining teams. We don't get to talk a lot about NFL because we're so busy with college. But since we have this things have already went wacky today with Dalton, not being able to make it, and so might as well talk some NFL here before we leave. Out of the remaining teams here, Chris, who's your favorite right now? Like in the playoffs, right now in the NFL. I know it's been a crazy year. It's injury riddled, and teams are just really looking who makes the least amount of mistakes. That's who's winning right now. But I'm a Packers fan. We get to face the Bears, our arch nemesis in the playoffs. It feels like it's a Super Bowl for the Bears. Not, it's a big game for us too. I'm looking forward to it. But what are you looking forward to right now in the playoffs, and who's your favorite?
I'm looking forward to to me, it's the Buffalo Bills. It's all or in now. There's no Patrick Mahomes, no Joe Burrow,
Yeah,
no Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen. This is your moment. If I'll give my hot take. If the Buffalo Bills don't win the Super Bowl, Sean McDermott probably is gone. Because at this point,
I
then
agree.
it's like, okay, we've got there's no Chiefs, no Bengals, no Ravens, all these teams that give you trouble. What next? Uh, I'd say the NFC, the NFC. I still give it to the Rams. It's the coach quarterback combo. Matt Stafford and Sean McVay are the best out of that group. I don't trust Caleb Williams yet. Jordan Love, you're never sure if he's ever going to hit it in terms of his full
No,
potential. The Eagles are, the Eagles. You think they're out, then they're in, then they're in, then they're out. It's that team is just sort of on a verge of brawling with itself. Seahawks just feel like a year too early. I don't like Sam Darnold's turnovers. I think that could cost them. It's the perfect Super Bowl this year when you think there's no real favorite. You have no idea who's going to win. So I'm just going with the coach quarterback combos. Give me Buffalo versus the Rams in the Super Bowl.
I love that. I love that. I actually took the words out of my mouth. I got that same exact matchup in the Super Bowl. I got the Rams winning. I think Devontae Adams, Puka Nakua, can just have an absolute monster day. Matt Stafford, like you said, got the McVay, looking to get their second ring together, which I think they get it done. As a Packers fan, I hope we can spark some magic and go on a run. But yeah, Jordan Love, I've never been too high on the guy. I've always been skeptical on the trade up for him. Trading up for him. Led the nation in picks coming out of college, and then we're banged up. Tucker Kraft hurt, Micah Parsons hurt, and Jaden Reed got hurt in the beginning of the year. Christian Watson's finally coming along, but as he's coming along, other pieces start falling apart. So, and then you got to look at our interior defensive line, which might as well be hurt because they just suck. And we're going to need a nose guard, some defensive tackles next year. So, yeah, I don't know. It's a weird year. Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson were in a must-win situation for me this year because I expected the Chiefs not to win it all. I didn't expect them to miss the playoffs, but I definitely expected them to not win the championship this year. I thought this was a perfect year for Lamar and the Ravens, or for Josh Allen and the Bills. So I think Josh Allen needs to get it done, but the weapons kind of scare me. Does he have the firepower enough if it becomes a shootout? And then sometimes when it's not a shootout, Josh Allen just beats himself. So it's like it's always the perfect storm with the Bills. When Josh Allen's playing great, the people around him can't play, and then when they just need him, when nobody's playing good, they just need him to play good. Sometimes at the end he just kind of struggles. So I'm curious to see what happens. I think we're going to see interesting draft cycle here with the Raiders. I mean, want to get your thoughts before we ended on the coaches. Then we got Pete Carroll out, Harbaugh out, um, Aaron Glenn right now not out as of yet with the New York Jets, which is asinine to me. For them to pull a whole season off without a pick is crazy. But what do you think about some of these openings? Harbaugh, where do you think he might go? Some people are saying Giants. And what do you think the chances as some of these NFL, teams, if they go get a college coach at the end, last minute?
I have no idea where Harbaugh's going because I still am under the impression we're going to get some surprise firings soon. And we
Yeah, me
talked about
too.
it. If Buffalo gets bounced in the first round, I could see Sean McDermott getting fired and Harbaugh making his way all the way to Buffalo. Because
Yeah.
Buffalo's going to want somebody who can win them the Super Bowl. They're not going to just trust any coordinator. I still don't know what the hell's going on with Mike Tomlin. I mean, he could be the one gone. With this wacky year, we could also see him winning the whole thing. Him and Aaron Rodgers continue to just defy expectations. So who the hell knows? But that's another job opening. Uh, Miami, I'm still not sure what the hell's going on because you hear reports of the GM, we're bringing in GMs who are compatible, quote unquote, with Mike McDaniel. But then if they're being asked, well, what would you do for a head coach? So look, it wouldn't shock me next week if Aaron Glenn gets fired, Mike McDaniel gets fired, Buffalo opens up. We're not done. I mean, it's just there's so much right now. I mean, nobody had Harbaugh, getting let go early in this bingo card. So look, I still think that Glenn's not out of the woods. You heard a report from John Frachinelli of the NFL that basically said that Todd Bowles is almost out if John Harbaugh agreed to work under Jason Light. So again, I wouldn't be surprised if next week we get more coaches fired, more job openings. It's a wild, wild west, and we're not even sure who's going to get filled by Super Bowl weekend.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I think Harbaugh maybe have already gotten a call. Maybe he's already just kind of waiting and just, or maybe he hasn't, got any call. He's just waiting to see what opens up. Like you said, I think the Giants are an interesting one for me. Uh, I think Harbaugh, that could be a good fit. Him and Jackson Dart. You got Malik Neighbors. Once he gets healthy, you'll have him. They got a top 5 pick. Then they got Carter last year, so Abdul Carter. So I think that's they're actually could find themselves in the playoffs. I think next year or the year after, if they hire the right coach and just some of the talent they have around them. What do you think about the Giants? And do you think, you know, um, are they closer to success than A lot of these teams, like I think Miami's really far away. I think the Jets are really far away. I think, them and the Ravens now have the best, I guess openings. Those are the best two jobs. What do you think the best job is right now, that are open? Do you think a better job is the Giants or the Ravens?
For the immediate, it's the Ravens because you have the quarterback, you have the defense, you should be able to win right away. I'd say the best job overall is probably it's a wild card here. The Browns. They
Mm.
have tons of draft capital. You have an owner who doesn't have any kids who are going to take over or interject. They've shown they're patient. They have 2 first-round picks. You're not married to Shador Sanders, so if he doesn't pull out, you can always go back in the draft next year, which next year is supposed to be the big quarterback draft.
Yeah, which
I mean,
scares me.
every job
Which
has
scares
holes.
me.
Yeah, it is. Well, and we're still not sure what's going on with the Jets. Like right now, it looks like in a driver's seat, but who knows? Dante Moore might come back, and all of a sudden, it might be just a one quarterback draft because I'm not really sold on Ty Simpson. So, and the Raiders are just a mess. Who's running the team? Does Tom Brady want to be an owner? Does he want to basically just screw around? We're not sure. That is basically this NFL hiring coaching cycle.
Yeah, you have to pander to these personalities more than you ever have. It's weird, man. And it's weird because you're paying these guys at an all-time rate more than we ever have, and we also have to cater to them more. You would think like, all right, we're paying you all these dollars, you know, it's our system, but it's not like that. It's these players run the show. Some of the coaches are running the show. It really, yeah. I mean, Brady, it seems like he wants to do everything. I think if you gave Brady his option, he'd probably be the coach, the manager, in the booth calling the game, and then quarterback as well. And I think if you gave him the option, he would do all of them. So I don't know what the Raiders are going to do. If I'm Dante Moore, I'm looking out the door, I'm checking out the window, seeing the weather, and if I'm projected to go to the Cleveland Browns, if I'm projected to go to the New York Jets, I'm taking my ass back to Oregon. Um, I'm going to go ahead and get some more Phil Knight Nike money. That's one of the things with this NIL these kids get to do. They don't have to go to the draft if they, because they're getting NIL money. I think Moore stays. If I'm Moore, here's my perfect scenario for Dante Moore because I like Dante Moore. In my perfect scenario, Dante Moore comes back for another year of school, and somehow the Falcons get him next year. I think he would be a great fit in Atlanta. And don't know how. I just think they have a lot of talent. We'll see what Atlanta does at coaching. Forgot to bring them up as well. So I think next year they'll have a first year coach. They won't do that well. They'll see themselves with a top 3 pick, and Dante Moore will go there. That's if I can write it out, but we don't know. He might go ahead and win a national championship and say, "Screw it, I'm going to the NFL draft. I'm going to go turn around the Jets, or I'm going to go turn around the Browns," and then he'll be shit out of luck. But yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know. I think I like the Browns though. I like the Browns look. I mean, I think they're gonna draft a quarterback, and I like Shadur Sanders. I think they're gonna cut Shadur Sanders, and he's gonna go somewhere and get a shot somewhere. What do you think about that? Do you think they have Shadur next season, or they're gonna draft a quarterback?
Yeah, they'll have Shador next season. Because who
Okay.
else are you going to get, really, Vet?
I mean, I didn't think that's what I said last year, but then they showed up to camp with freaking Kenny Pickett, and then they called Tyler Huntley, then they called Joe Flacco. It's like nothing's off the table with these Cleveland Browns. It's just like
They'll
I
bring
could
this.
just
They'll bring in a veteran, but I think Shador showed enough where it's like, okay, let's ride with him. Let's see what he does. Because all these options, and especially with the cap, which is because of their cap situation, they're not going to be able to add Tua or add Kyler Murray. So now you're looking at going, okay, what are the options?
yeah.
And it's just look, if it's not Aaron Rodgers isn't coming there, so scrape that off. You're not sure if Daniel Jones is going to be ready by training camp, so you can scrap that off. Uh, do you trade a second round pick for Mac Jones? And is Mac Jones, a franchise guy? You're not sure. I could see them bring in somebody like a Tyrod Taylor as the veteran quarterback. You ride with Shador, and again, you're not married to him, so it's not like you're
Yeah.
stuck with like in the Jackson Dart scenario where he's the first round quarterback. We got to stick with this guy for at least 2 more years. I think we're going to see they'll build up the offensive line, give Shador every chance to succeed, and if not, well, again, 2027, you'll have Hoover, Manning, Mensa, Moore,
CJ
North
Bailey.
Sellers. I mean, that class alone for quarterbacks, you could probably go, you know what, we'll draft one instead there, instead of maybe trading, multiple first round picks to possibly get Fernando Mendoza. Possibly.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, it's a good point. Yeah, you just never know what the Browns are going to do. If you would put some money on what the Browns are going to do, usually you're going to lose that bet. But yeah, we'll see. I think Shearer's got some promise. It's a low risk, with situation with him with his contract, like you said. So we'll see how it plays out, and we'll see how this college football playoff plays out with this Final Four, Chris. Before we go, I want to give a shout to our main man, Brett Collegier, a USC commit who just left, and he is officially in Southern California, USC Trojan early enrollee. So shout out to Brett Collegier, IMG captain and a friend of the program. So shout to him. And that about does it here for us, Home Squad Sports, for our college football semifinal preview on this Thursday. It's going to start kicking off weird, but it's okay. We'll take it sooner than later. We got some football. Big ups to Dalton. Big thoughts and prayers out to Dalton. Hopefully, he's all good. He'll be back next episode, so don't worry. And Will Thomas will be joining us every Monday for Senior Bowl preview. Before we head out here, Chris, you got any last words for the people?
Check out the website, lastcallpodcast.com, also on YouTube. I'm on Rumble, Facebook. And I apologize, as I said, been sick the last couple of weeks during the holiday season. We're going to be revving back up. You can check it out for the show this week. Will Thomas stopped by. We talked some transfer portal, talked our own college football playoffs, and we talked about the future of what the portal look like, who might be a commissioner. And once again, always an honor, pleasure jumping on, even if it was unfortunate under some dire circumstances, to Home Squad Sports. And Daniel, thank you for this. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Anytime, Chris. Like I said, I really appreciate you hopping on, and so does Dalton. I'll check in with Dalton, make sure he's all good. Fender benders are never fun, especially when it's cold out, and it's just never fun. Car trouble is never fun in any shape or form or fashion. So hope everyone's having a good rest of your week. We will continue on with our coverage. Like we said, we will be back Monday at noon Eastern for our recap of the playoff and see who we have squaring off and facing off in the national championship. Is it going to be Dan Lanning, Signetti? We will see. Or the Hurricanes finally going to be back and playing for some hardware, which seems like it's been ages. They've never made an appearance here. And the last time they've been played for a championship, it was BCS, 2 teams. So, I was very young back when that happened. So we'll see if the Canes finally get their swagger back. But nonetheless, yeah, stay locked here. Stay tuned for Home Squad Sports. Our coverage of Senior Bowl is just starting, and we will see you Monday. And you all have a good one. Thank you.